The green world. Let's see how it all started, or at least tell, they say how it once started, how it all started. The young man once bent over, his hands were on his knees, he was gulping huge breaths of air. Beads of perspiration trickled from his forehead down to the bridge of his nose. He watched them drop to the ground. It was getting easier. He raised his head and looked at the master, standing at the doorway to the house. The master stood there, smiled at him. How does he do that? The young man wondered. He's nearly 3 times my age, and yet he left me far behind. Now he stands there, smiling. How does he do that? Matu put his head down and watched the beads of sweat fall from his face to the ground again. As he watched, one of them almost struck a tiny ant scurrying past his feet. The ant shuddered for a split second and then returned to his travels. Matu kept watching. He leaned forward. Another droplet was on the end of the nose, moving so that he was directly over the ant. He watched as the drop fell and again nearly struck the ant. Once again the tiny black ant stopped and shuddered, and then continued on. Does he see me? Matu wondered. Is he aware that I am the cause of the great rain and thunder that he suffers? He wondered. No, you are not the cause of the thunder and great rain. That's not true. Does this tiny ant believe that his labors on this earth will earn him a great reward in afterlife? No, he does not work for this life, for other life. He works for this life, the preset moment. Otherwise they will go hungry in the winter. Otherwise they will die from the elements, from the effect of the elements and cold. Isn't it? Does he believe in an afterlife? Of course not. Matu looked intensely at the end. Are you well, little one, that I exist and that I can put an end to your life with no more than a whim as my motive? Well, we can, but why would we? That's the question. It's the same for those who are bigger than us. They can put an end to our lives. But then the questions remain, why would they? There's always a question at the end. Why would they? I can step on the ant and kill an ant in the park. But why would I do that? Why I just don't get out of there? After all, I am in their habitat. They are not wrong. I am wrong for being there. Because that's their habitat. Isn't it? Makes sense. Is it logic? Logic. All about logic. Yes, we can end like some idiot. They put molten, I don't know, molten zinc or something like that. Molten boiled thing then throw at the anti-hill. I see. And then that's very cool. Why would you do that? That's nature. You want to live, isn't it? So why don't you allow the ants also and all other creatures to live as much as you want to live? It's common sense, isn't it? Thus we can kill them, but why would we? Given that they too belong to this experience of life, this existence. They too belong, and they too want to live their way, just as we want to live our way. Is it? Then suddenly it dawned on him. He stood up and looked up into the sky. beings up there that I cannot see, he wondered. Are there beings that I cannot see, that I cannot comprehend, and yet they have power of life and death over me as I have the power of life and death over the tiny ant? Can I see them? He wondered. Even if I try, he scanned the sky. Are the clouds the footprints of being so large that he cannot see them? He wondered to himself. He stared at the sky for a long time. Are they up there? He wondered. No, they are not just there on the sky or beyond it. They are here with us in the superficie as much as they are below the earth. Okay? There's enough. There has been enough time given for you all to process this truth, that they are not just beyond the sky, but in here among us, here on the superficie and below the earth. When finally he looked down again. The master was right in front of him. It is time, Matu, Master Pella said. It's time that you learn the history of the Ancient Ones. Matu was shocked and he was pleased. It was one of the things that he had wanted to learn about since he had joined the order. He smiled. Get your papers, Matu, the elder said. Meet me in the library as soon as you have washed and changed. I'll wait for you there. Matu nodded to him and nearly ran up the stairs to his room. Matu changed and made his way to the library. Per was there, looking out of the window at the setting sun. As Matu entered, Per turned to him. This will be the first review of the history of the stars of our galaxy, which you must learn, Matu. The elder began. Begin slowly, listen carefully to the names and learn the words that shall teach you. You will see them again and again, and you will need to know how to use the words and how to decipher them. Matu nodded and he sat down. The excitement still held him. The words of the Ancient Ones, the secret language, it was his dream come true. He placed the papers carefully beside him, easily within his grasp. He had learned to heed his master's words well. In but a few weeks with his teacher, he had written pages and pages filled with words and names. His scroll was full of notations and scraps of information which he had managed to collate over the course of the first few conversations with the elder. Long ago, Per began, there was nothing, Matu. There was no light, there was no dark, and there was no essence. There was only nothingness, the void. Matu sat at his table, tried to imagine what nothing was like. No light, no dark. How could such a thing be? He wondered. The void is the void. The void is just that, a conscience. It is made up of sounds. Sounds that are able to create things. And that's how I experienced it recently through out of a bad experience. It's the nothingness, and then the moans, the sounds that comes from it created everything with the help of the quarks and the atoms. And no, the reptilian queen is not the first. It's not true. And all these beings is not the first. and there has been many things created at once, because once it exploded from within. It created many sections of this universe at the same time, only that some section has been hidden and unknown to the other sector. You understand? So they was unaware of the existence of the other sectors that existed at the same time period, the same timeline. So no, there hasn't been a god, there hasn't been no reptilian queen to be the primitive. That's not true. The natives or whatever. No, 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 and no, and no. Thousand billions times no, no, no. Okay, all has been created at the same time, and that truth many people doesn't know yet, but I know. Thanks to the multiverse, I know. Maybe the scientists know by now, I'm not sure. Maybe they know. But many people, especially so the religionists, the dogmatic ones, just cannot grasp this concept. Not yet, not yet. Maybe one day some of them will. Some, at least. So no light, no dark. How could such a thing be? He wondered. Yeah, because the void is the nothing. After the wow exhaled, you understand? It's about sound. It's about explosion, exhalation. And one day the multiverse will inhale, and everything will implode inside once again. This is a nuclear implosion, but it hasn't much to do with the multiverse and the void implosion. And then once that void is exhaling, everything will go back inside again. It will give a rest, but then it will restart again, maybe after millions, billions of time, of years, eons. Not to worry, because it won't be now. We'll go and come back, go come back, go come back, go come back, go come back the infinite times before it happen. Mark my words, it won't be so soon. We're gonna see our great grandchildren come here and chat. It won't happen yet. So after the Matu remembered the story of the exhale of the void, and how the ancient ones had believed the void to be universal female given birth to the universe. Doesn't matter whether female or male, that's not going to, sexism or politics or whatever. Let's just see it as a neutral aspect of events, of occurrence, nothing to do with sex or anything like that. Just once this door here inhale in, everything will go back again, back to where it came from. I'm gonna be funny. Okay. Matu remembered the story of the exhaling of the void, and how the ancient ones had believed the void to be the universal female given birth to the universe. The essence of the universe came spilling out from the center of the void herself. Pulsate, making grand sweeping gesture with his hands, swirling and tossing wave after wave of waters of essence crashed out into the nothingness sea. Yeah, I have this experience. It was amazing. It's indescribable. So, as the unshiny streams of the energy of the universe, arc of life itself flowed outwards from inside the void, they formed a huge swirling like twirl, and then they make shapes. It's a long thing that becomes squares and round columns of black as she, billions and billions of miles long, looking like giant serpents, twisting and turning through the great nothing. I didn't see any black, I saw white. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be racist here, but what I've seen was white. Perhaps me too once been equivocated, something like mistaken. Maybe it was black and white because I have seen white. You see this grayish white color here? That's what I've seen. And then they swirl and swirl all around in lines, and after that as they oscillate, they will make shape. That's how I have seen the creation. Okay, I didn't see. I saw also the blackening sea. I saw around it, but then from this blackening sea, I see around it a white color emerging from it. So, as the shiny streams of the energy of the universe, arc of life itself flowed outward, they formed huge swirling columns of black essentially billions and billions of miles long, looking like giant serpents, twisting and turning through the great nothing. Sometimes they slitted off into the nothingness sea by themselves. Yeah, I've seen. But sometimes they swirled together like huge primordial snakes, writhing in joy as they were in giant mating days, correct, crashing and colliding together. They spun around, oscillating each other faster and faster with every new moment. They squeezed and crushed into each other, causing heat and enormous pressures between their entwined bodies. Like imagine the snake dance, the mate dance, that they entwine themselves. That's how it was created. Like this, intertwined, but they dance in the air. But it was all pure translucid. It was not black, translucid gases. I have seen gases. Just you see the cloud there, the white thing, that gases, that one. I've seen that one. So he stopped and looked at direction at Matu, and there Matu, there in the midst of their gigantic writhing, the very first atoms of the universe were born. Atom, that's the word, that's your God. Atoms, the key word is atom. Atoms created everything there is. Nothing else did. The atoms, that is our creator. We are atoms. Everything there is atom. Our planet is made of atoms. So is everything else. In the dance of the creation of the first serpent, like primordial strands of essence, the first atoms were born. Matu was mesmerized. He was completely caught up in the images in his head. Giant snakes of the original stuff of the universe. No light, no dark. Something is spilling out into nothing, essentially serpents squirming and twisting together. Amazing! He thought to himself, absolutely amazing. Yeah, that's how things were created. Nay, in the bodies of the snakes of creation, the atoms began to multiply. Simply atoms of hydrogen were born. See? Time and time again, the crushing dance of the primordial serpents pressed together the first atoms of the universe. And then suddenly, Matu leaned slightly forward. Boom! Matu jumped. There has been an explosion, not implosion, but explosion of the exhalation of these gases from the void. Pei smiled at him and moved to his favorite chair. Matu was surprised at the elder's sudden outburst. Something happened, Matu. There, in the middle of the passion dance of the giant swirling serpentine essences that could fill our universe. There, a tiny spark was ignited. In that tiny little spark, Matu, that tiny little spark made all the difference in our universe. Matu knew there was a message for him in paired words. A spark of passion created our universe. He offered with a bit of hesitancy. Pei smiled. Bravo, Matu, he said to the apprentice as he leaned forward. From the tiny spark of passion can come an entire universe. What he means that? Means sex or something? I don't know. Came an entire universe. You can create a whole new world with but one tiny spark of true passion, my young friend. Never forget that, Matu. From one tiny spark of pure passion, a universe can be born. Wow. Tiny sparkle after the twirling of gases and atoms. Matu nodded his understanding. He loved the insights that Pei offered. That spark and other sparks of passion that were freed from the creator dance of these enormous snakes of Essenshi. They set off a series of explosions that changed the universe forever. Because suddenly, Matu, suddenly the darkness of the universe was filled with this explosion of the first suns. And so who is the creator if not the atoms? What creator if not us? Purposed. Matu looked at the elder, wondering what was next, and then Pei said simply, "Then there was light." Matu sat back with a smile on his face. So there is it, he thought to himself, from giant written strands of Essenshi that have come from the void was atoms and hydrogen. The atoms and the gases and the suns of the universe had been born. And then there was light. Matu grinned. But wait, he suddenly sat up. Is that how life was formed, Master? In the bodies of the serpents of creation, or gases, atoms, was life formed in the dance of creation, as you said? Pei looked at the young man. In the dance of creation, the atoms of life were formed. Yes, but the essence of life, Matu, The essence of life was in the breath exhaled by the void, he answered. Exactly. Had it not been for the void, nothing would exist. Matu sat silently, staring at the elder, trying to figure out the words. The atoms of life and the essence of life. He repeated to himself, the essence of life was already in the breath of the void. Does that mean that life existed from the moment of the birth of the universe? Or it was there all the time, but it is just let it go from within, from inside. Maybe it was there all the time beyond this universe that we live. It was there in other multiverses, who knows? And he just spit it out from the void. Does that mean that life exists from the moment of the birth of the universe? But if that's true, begin again. Interruption Matu's thoughts. Again and again, the reading primordial serpents crashed together, forming moist gases and creating moist sparks. Again and again, more suns were born, swirling together in a bright shine whirlpool. They came together, spinning furiously like a giant merry-go-round that was billions and billions of light years across. Matu tried to keep it up. He tried to imagine the mate of giant universal serpents of Essenshi and the birth of stars. That was not serpent, that's just a kind of pattern, a line. I've seen it, and it can form many shapes. It's not essentially serpents. When you talk, you put in your mind that is a serpent, you will imagine that serpent has given birth to this universe, and that's not true. I've seen, and I was awake. I was not asleep, and it looks like gases, white, translucid, and then it just like the clouds. As you look at the clouds, they have the capacity to change form, isn't it? The same thing as it happened if the creation that came out from the void. So it's not necessarily serpent, just a shape. Matu tried to keep up. He tried to imagine the mate of giant universal serpent. No, there's no such thing. These were the galaxies of the universe, Matu. Pei was smiling again. In time, one of those swirling galaxies would come to be known as eridanus. Unless, bingo, I know what happened. I already break the puzzle. I'm gonna explain. These beings has the power to move planets and galaxies. Okay, so what happened is that they come from the bottom of the cosmos, of the void, and they transport, literally speaking, their place, their how to say, their universe to our solar universe. They came from the void and literally implanted themselves here. Okay, it was this what happened, so as to make part of this universe. However, it wasn't like this before. They came from the bottom of the void. And once they come here, there were already what we call the solar system, the system that you see here, this constellation. But what they did was to infiltrate themselves, use the how to say, the legend of the swirling twirly snake, this and that. There's no such thing as twirly snake. The snake were themselves, who came and transformed this universe and are changing everything according to their liking. according to their will. This is what has happened. They came from the bottom of the cosmos. This man here is lying. Matu tried to keep up. He tried to imagine the mate of giant universal. These were galaxies of the universe. Matu. The time of the swirling galaxy will come to be known as eridanus. Yeah, of course, because after all, they construct their own base here, so as to better manipulate what, isn't it? They came from the bottom of the cosmos. They make their way out to create chaos here. But there has always been life here prior to their coming. Pei stood up and walked to the window. What you are about to learn, Matu, is the history of the galaxy of Eridanus, which is now Orion, and some of the stars and the star beams of the galaxy. But in particular, my friend, we shall speak of the history of one tiny planet in that galaxy, and the origins of a group of star beings known as humankind. No such thing. Humankind was here. Or in another, maybe, yes, another, but they have nothing to do, maybe another star constellation, but they have nothing to do much with how we are right now. We have evolved here on Earth. However, their concept of humankind is totally different from what we see now. Is animal-like. Okay, they were like a light, and sometimes there's animals-like, animal avatar, not humans at all. At their map, it's just like a serpent. They create this in their own image, because they are the serpent who came from the void. Okay, they are the creatures that come from the void to create havoc here on this constellation. So this is eridanus. Eridanus is very big Cetus or Nax. Here we have Cetus, Taurus on top, Orion near Taurus, Lepus, Calamba, Calum, ooh, sounds like the intestine, Horologram, Phoenix below the rad picture. The eridanus is very large. Humankind, relax. Matu was excited and he was nervous. He really wanted to know that was why he had tried so hard to make the others choose him. He did not know what the truth was. Hey, this was those maybe lie, twist, etc. Not everything he say here is true. Maybe he wouldn't like it, but he had to know. He had actually had moments of doubt in those first months. Of course, and he had all the right to, because certain things told here is not quite true. Every time Master Pet showed him something, another of the truth, his truth, their truth, not the absolute truth, another of the truth he had always held to was undone. Up is down. Black is white. You see, they twist everything. And everything you have ever been taught is a lie. Those were some of the first words he had heard from Pa. Yeah, because you all have twisted everything. They were hard to hear in the beginning, but the more he learned, the more Matthew found them to be true. And it made him angry. Not at the pair, but at the education system that had betrayed him and humankind. Hello? Your masters are telling lies. They are not telling the whole truth. When he had joined the order, it was for his own reasons, for his own purposes. He had been searching for the truth for himself. But now he remained for another reason, for a more important reason. Now he remained for his daughter's sake. How come he's a young one when he had got a daughter? Oh, please. He didn't want her to be betrayed as he was. He turned to look at his mentor. Per recognized the look. It was the look of compassion and determination. It was good. This was the look that all teachers searched for. Per returned to the table where Matu was sitting. Per began again, and the swirling new galaxies, Matu. The process of creation continued, swirling in on themselves. The galaxies continued to press their senses together, pounding and crush it into primitive atoms. Then, here and there, again and again, there was an explosion. A fishy burning star fell in on itself until it exploded, bursting outward. The exploding star created newer and more powerful energies, and from the center of the fire explosion, more atoms were formed. But these atoms were more complex than the primitive atoms of one electron and one proton. These had 4, 5, and 6 electrons in their outer shells, with just as many protons in its heart. Atoms of carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen were formed, flung out into the galaxy to join with other atoms formed from other stars that had exploded. Purposed. From the cores of a dancing star came the atoms of the elements of our bodies, Matu, he said. We are the children of the fury of a dancing star, see, that gave itself to the galaxy and the universe. We are born of gigantic explosions and supernovas. We walk in bodies that were once stars. Exactly. Are we star people, Matu? Yes, literally. And no such God that came from the sky and then created the eyes and necks, this and that. No. We are from atoms. Okay, put this in your heads. We come from atoms in the stars. That's why when they say, oh, you come from the star, not say that we come from there. We were created by the stars. And I'm gonna repeat because I like to learn more and more. The swirling new galaxies, Matu, the process of creation continued. Swirling in on themselves, the galaxies continued to press their senses together, pounding and crush it into primitive atoms. Then, here and there, again and again, there was an explosion. A fishy burning star fell in on itself until it exploded, bursting outward. The exploding star created newer and more powerful energies, and from the center of the fire explosion, more atoms were formed. But these atoms were more complex than the primitive atoms of the electron electron and 1 proton. This had 4, 5, and 6 electrons. See how special we are? And their outer shells with junctions with many protons in each heart. Atoms of carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen were formed, flung out into the galaxy to join with the other atoms formed from other stars that had exploded. Wow, amazing! Purposed from the chaos of the dense star came the atoms of the elements of our bodies. Elements of our bodies, Matu. We are the children of the fury of a dense star that gave itself to the galaxy and to the universe. We are born of gigantic explosions and supernovas. We walk in bodies that were once stars. Matu was stunned. We really are star people, he thought to himself. We are star people, my God. What does that say of us? Pearl leaned forward with his brows forward. Matu seldom saw such a serious look on the master's face. In the time of the first explosions of stars, in the time of the formation of the very first primitive marriage of electrons and protons, this Matu, this was the original atom in the eve of creation, exactly. Matu's eyes popped open. Pell leaned back and smiled at him. And no such thing as a woman, Eve and Adam come and give birth. Nonsense. Then we come from incest or what? Of course we have the same origin, which are stardust. It doesn't mean that's from one man and a woman. No. All was created at the same time. There's no such thing as incest. Incest is in the manipulated and twisted, perverted, corrupted mind of the New Age humans. But there's no such thing at the beginning. For intelligence's sake. Here, where our planet comes from, our beautiful planet, our beautiful universe, no such thing as the aliens created it, God created, no such thing, okay? If you have to pray for those supernova and stars and atoms. That's from where we come from, to see atoms, protons. Beautiful, simply beautiful, amazing. This is what I've seen on my experiment or my experience, but it was swirling take up forms. Beautiful. Like this, it was like this, and that become like this, but it was like this. Okay, so in the time of the first explosion of stars, in the time of the formation of the very first primitive marriage of electrons and protons, we are product of the electrons and protons. We are the product of the electrons and protons. Give thanks to them. This Matu, this was the original atom and the eve of creation. Matu almost burst out laughing. Good one, master. Matu thought to himself, good one, master, you got me. Many times this happened, Matu. Peck continued, from the rinting dance of the primordial snakes of Senshi, from the firstborn stars that grew and fell in on themselves, from the super explosion of stars 1,000 times larger than our own sun, the atoms of the galaxy and of life itself were formed. Clouds of gas a million degrees hot, and gravity that would make a pinhead weigh 1,000,000 pounds. Each galaxy swirled and spun in its own atoms. as if it were cooking its own broth of life and substance. Beautiful, simply beautiful. Life and substance. Matu could almost feel the heat. The heat. Atoms began to cling together, tiny little partnerships of 2 and 3 atoms, holding tightly to each other. Then another and another. Each new particle joined to make the colony of atoms stronger. Too tiny to be seen by the eye, these microscopic colonies swirled together in the gigantic primordial whirlpool. From these colonies of atoms, Matu, the gases and solids of the galaxy were born. 100 years, 1,000 years, a million years later, some of the colonies of atoms grew to become tiny specks of dust. Then another 1,000 years later, the colonies of sparks of dust grew larger, becoming pebbles, then in rocks, then in boulders, and the giant mixing bowl of primitive elements that swirled around infant stars. A small glob of rock and gas once forming, become larger and larger in the swirling warmth of the gases and dust. And the swirling warmth of gases, Matu anticipated, a planet was about to be born. A small world was being created, Pep finished. But there were more elements that needed to be added. The atoms of newly born gases had also begun to collect around the building primitive worlds. Gases sometimes trapped between the stones and the crust of the new world, and sometimes from inside the stones themselves. Because over there's molecule inside the rocks. There's molecules swirling and vibrating. From inside the stones themselves were released by the tremendous heat at the core of the infant planet. Here and there on the surface of the forming world, small clouds of nitrogen and oxygen gathered. Like a tiny puff of smoke, at first making its wispy way across the shifting land plates. The gases slipped through the dust and gas. Sometimes the hydrogen and oxygen gases trapped in the slowly forming worlds were crushed together to form water droplets. Slowly, or through an internal explosion, the water particles made their way to the surface. Sometimes the tiny molecules came from a hurtling stone that was flung through space by another exploding world. In many different ways, tiny little droplets of water gathered and covered the primordial cooling crust of the new world. Rain, Matu thought to himself. Clouds smaller than your hands, Matu. Growing larger, forming larger and larger clouds. They cooled and warmed, again and again over millions of years in the process. Eventually, droplets condensed and rain fell. It's always so simple when Pe explains it, Matu thought. On the tiny hardening crust, the heated stone layers turned each droplet of rain into steam. The vaporized drops of water rose upwards and were cooled, and the process began again. As the cycle continued, the ball of hot rocks became a globe of molten stone with a hardened and cooled crust. Steam was everywhere, gases circulated through the atmosphere. Here, Matu, were the beginnings of a new world. Matu could imagine the steamy world, and time, as the steam condensed into droplets and fell once again on the surface of the new world, some of the drops remained in small puddles on the surface. More drops fell. Puddles became ponds, ponds became lakes, and lakes became oceans. The heat and steam were everywhere, but the bath was near complete. A steamy misty world complete with land and sea had formed Gaia. That's how our beautiful planet has been born, and not how the religionist fanatics has described it. That's sickening. I'm more pro-science. It makes more sense in a logic, and not some ridiculous, ridiculous preconception and illusions, fantasia. Our beautiful world. Wow, look at a snake. Oh my God. So a snake is a symbol of this earth, and yet many people kill them. My God, poor things. And this is saying the snake sacred. The serpent is sacred. Humans should respect more snakes, because everything resembles a snake. Now here is our ocean. Oh, beautiful. Create from atoms. Gases. And neutrons. The heat and steam were everywhere, but the bath was near complete. A steamy misty world complete with the land and sea had formed. Pam was making sweeping gestures with his arms. Matu enjoyed watching the elder cat get carried away by his teachings. Ocean tossed and turned and crashed at virgin shores. The cooling lands expanded and contracted. Enormous cracks formed, mountains were pushed upwards, and others were forced under the creeping plates of land. Volcanoes exploded, erupting and adding their molten innards to the surface, sometimes creating towering peaks, other times creating small islands. Rain and snowstorms moved inland, pounding away at the craggy mountain tops, covering them with ice and snow. On the highest peaks, melting snow formed small ponds and lakes, then turned to rivers that made their way down the lands below. Creation, Matu emphasized. Creation is a wondrous thing. It's a wonder, really, I cannot explain. Marvelous to see a planet being formed is no less a miracle than watching the birth and development of a being, not say on child, but an animal. It's a miracle of life on a grand scale. A being is born, a world is born, both a miracle of creation. Matu loved these stories. Pep paused for a moment to let the images sink into his apprentice's mind. In time, Matu, in time, the violence of birth calmed to a roar, constantly moving and always creating, oscillating. The oceans became calmer at the times. In fact, they were almost silent. Pep began again, at least on the surface. But do not be fooled, Matu. What you see on the surface is not always an indication of what goes on underneath. Of course, the current. For there, in the deepest regions of the virgin seas, small pockets of newly formed life began to gather. Wait, Master, Matu stopped the path. Excuse me, but was not life born of lightning bolts that flashed through the gases that had collected on the surface of the waters? Well done, smiled the apprentice. Yes, it's true that one can create the necessary elements for physical life by sending a lightning bolt through primordial gases. But so can the heat and gases emitted by an underwater volcano also bring forth the elements of life. That's why now we have volcano exploding and the earthquake, because it's a new birth, a new creation form now in the new age. The falling of a comet into the waters of a new world, the explosion of a star, the collision of two small worlds, that too create the elements of life. Any number of events can create them. Be not quick to commit to only one possibility. Matu had not thought about an underwater volcano. Of course there are. I guess it could happen, he thought to himself, and a falling comet could do it too. And Matu almost dreaded the end that would occasionally pop up in past teachings. It was usually a revelation that Matu had not even thought of. When you create the elements of life, you do not create life. You only create the foundation blocks that could sustain life. Matu was surprised. Are you saying, Elder, that life did not begin with that first bolt of lightning? Pe smiled. When you create an engine out of metal, you have created a shell that could move enormous vehicles or hurtle airplanes through the air. But you have not produced a creation that moves on its own. It needs a driving force, an impetus. It needs fuel. It needs fuel, Peagri. It needs a motivating force. Matu thought for a moment. Consciousness, he wondered aloud. It has been called consciousness. It has been called the soul, and it has been called the higher self. Matu thought about it for another fleeting moment. Where did the consciousness come from then, Master? He asked. Surely not from the lightning bolt or the gases? Pe smiled again. Well done, Matu. No, the consciousness was not born of a bolt of lightning or a cloud of gas. He stopped. Matu knew something was coming. It was born of the breath of the void, Pe said. The consciousness of the void filled the newly born universe, as did the essence of life. The birth of the elements of life produced the old shell which would later house the consciousness. Matu leaned forward, ready to ask his next question. And how that happened, Matu? We shall save for a later time. Pe smiled, that devilish smile again. Matu sat back. Damn it, he thought to himself, he did it to me again. Pe sipped at a drink he had before him, letting Matu's thoughts running wild, let him digest. Pe put his drink down. It has happened in many different ways in our universe, Matu. On some worlds of distant galaxies, the first cell of life was born from an underwater volcano. On another world, it was born from a lightning bolt striking through a cloud of water and gas. A storm of ionized gas penetrated by meteorite. An exploding star flinging the elements of life through space into some far distant waters of a planet light years away. In as many ways as there are stars, in countless ways, in countless galaxies, the first cells of life were born in the universe. So life was not just born on one single planet, Matu thought to himself, but then were all those cells the same master he wanted? No. Were all the original cells of life the same in their makeup? No. Pei smiled again at the young man. No, he answered. They were not the same exactly as I knew. The wonder of the universe is that there are many, many forms of life and many splendor, each with its own shape and makeup and form. There were thousands and thousands of different cells that were born in the galaxies. Each cell gave birth to a different race of beings exactly. So we are not the same. That's why they don't respect us and we don't respect others. Understand? Because of this difference, no matter how the love, the new age love doves try to um paint a image of love because we are all the same, we are all one. No, we are not. Maybe here, even here, it's not everybody the same. Not every cells are the same. Even in a family of 10 children, 1, 2 may be different from the others. Do you understand how it is created? Yeah, it's like that. Not every snowflake has the same pattern, um, the same design. Each snowflake is different, has different design, and so is the creation. Let's stop with this nonsense of dogmas and religions, philosophies, and um, mumbo jumbo makeups and illusions. Okay, it's only illusions. And now let's just celebrate the differences. Let's just celebrate the multitude of melting pot that we have, not just in this earth, but of world outside of it as well. So, and each race was born to a different path. Look not at the universe and assume that all life is as we see it. Even in our galaxy, life comes in many forms, in shape exactly. Pei leaned forward and directed his full attention to Matu. Remember this, Matu, he said in a most serious tone. The ant climbing on the side of a tree cannot recognize the man who stands staring at him. Man is not in the realm of perception of the ant. Man is an inconceivable form of life to him, to the ant. His senses are not capable of registering the complete form of a man. He saw me, Matu suddenly started. He saw me watching the ant. So too, the senses of humankind are unable to register the forms of life beyond our comprehension. Exactly. The best of our scientific inventions are but an extension of our senses. To the ant or any other creature, sentient beings, we are so large, so incomprehensible that he cannot imagine that we are a form of life. We are so big that he cannot imagine how such enormous things could possibly contain life as he knows it. So too, Mater, human beings cannot imagine how such a tiny creature could possibly contain a life of consciousness as we know it. They do. Insects, the fauna and flora in general, animals, plants, etc., vegetation, have their own form of consciousness, guided by a nucleus, a group. Let's say how to say it. It's a kind of it's a group soul, kind of a group soul, higher self of themselves, an extension of themselves, who guides them. Doesn't it have a concept of an afterlife? Doesn't ant believe in a god of ants? They don't have this consciousness, but they follow by instinct. They don't care about creeds. What they care is follow instinct without question. Doesn't it have a sense of right and wrong? No, because they already do what they are supposed to do. They don't do something different from what is ordained of them or expect of them. In our perception, he does not. But that is because the ant does not live according to our concepts of right and wrong. They follow a group consciousness here, soul family. Humans believe themselves to be superior to the ant. But why, Major? Why are we superior? Because we can change our environment? Is that a sign of wisdom or a sign of ignorance of the balance of nature? I see it as a sign of great responsibility, because the more entrusted to you, the more responsibility you carry. You see? So I see it a very great responsibility put on human shoulders or any other being's shoulders. Exactly so, because we have free will, and within this free will we got too much to explain, and we have to be accountable for our free will and our actions, isn't it? Look to any city streets, Matu. Is this scarring around of human beings in their everyday lives any different from the scarring which the ant does? No, not so much. Are those cities of humans any different from the colonies of ants? There are, because the colonies of ants is like it's more expansive around them, and the human cities now everywhere. There's few spaces to fit in. In the insect world, there's more space than in the humans. The humans, with their size, with their size and density takes up more space. Are the worlds of human beings indifferent from the worlds of ants? Yeah, it is different. The human is more devastating given their sizes. If the millions of years of existence of our planet reveals anything, Matu, it is that the ant colony is dedicated to the common good of the ant, while the human colonies are dedicated to the good of an elite few. That's true. There's big difference. Remember this, Matu. The ants have been here for millions of years. Yeah, and so does all the insects, adapting to the environment and coexist with it. Human beings, for all their supposed superiority, have been destroying their environment. When the food sources for humans are gone, the ant will continue to survive and thrive. When the comet strikes the earth and obliterates life as we know it, the ant will survive, and the cockroaches. What then shall we say about the will of God which so many human beings place such great faith in. Are human beings truly the chosen ones? No, never been. That his divine hand will spare, or are the lowly ants, as we arrogantly refer to them, are the true chosen ones who will be spared? Yeah, it will. And the cockroaches. Matu understand so much for the chosen one and the superior ones. Matu understand, my God, he thought to himself, it is true, if there is such a thing as an obedient servant, it's the ant, not just the ant, all the insects. We destroy the gift that God gave us, the word and our own people. We destroy ourselves, while the ant continues to serve the entire colony. I can't believe it, he marveled. The ant accomplishes what we can only dream about. If there is a God, the ant is his obedient servant. No sense that what God that wants is their alien God self, man. They have the alien God self. It's called the God self. The I am self. Pass it back to let the word sink in. Matu sat silently for a moment. So the difference here is that the ant, not just the insect world, follows their lineage, their soul family, or the I am self. Now, the difference with humans is because humans have this free will, okay, and then humans is more rebellious, and it was supposed to be this way because these aliens who came here created this way, but it wasn't like this before. But the aliens who invaded here, they created it this way. So you cannot blame us 100% for this rebellious attitude that we have. All right. Thus, there's the difference between we and the animals in general and the insect or the fauna and flora world. Is that we have the damned free will to choose, but there's no such thing like free ride, because one day you're gonna have to answer for that, for your free choices. You are accountable for that, and there is such thing as karma. Okay, so then is how things become complex with us humans, because each one of the same lineage or the same race group do share a particular I am self. Okay, so the problem is that not all of us follow the I am self. Does the religionists follow? Maybe they do, but those who want to be free, they don't follow this thing because they use logic, and they are right, because it wanted to have this God self nonsense. This was created by aliens to best control. So we cannot compare humans with the insect or the animals world as a whole. It doesn't make any sense to me, at least. So Matu understand. My God, he thought to himself, it's true. Is there such thing as an obedient servant? Not just the ant. We destroy the gift that God gave us, the word and our own people. We destroy ourselves while the ant continues to serve the entire colony. I can't believe his obedient servant. Pass it back to let the word sink in. Matu sat silently for a moment. An ant cannot see me, sir, he began. That I can understand. But what then, master? What must be hidden from me simply because I'm a human being? That's precisely the point, Matu answered. If you desire to gain the wisdom of the ant, You must think like the ant, or you become a hive-minded, and you follow religion, and you're gonna follow your God's self. So you want to have your how to say that word which I forgot. You want to have not say free will alone. Um, you're not gonna be any longer a free-minded thinker. You're gonna start to think like a robot, an android, an AI. Okay. If you want to follow an insect, then you're gonna become an android, become an AI, and not a human anymore. And that's gonna be so boring in commonplace. If you wish to gain the wisdom of the owl, you must think like an owl. And if you wish to gain the wisdom of starbeams, you must stop thinking like a human being. Why should I? We are not an owl. We are not an insect. Why you must expect us to think like an insect and be a beehive and an android? Is that what makes us so special? Is this how to say? Is this a diversity? Isn't it? Is this difference? This ability to think different and to create new things with that aspect that was given to us. You must think like a star being. Why should we? Matu marveled at the simplicity of the word and the difficulty of them. Matu was about to ask a question when Pe began again. In the galaxy of Eridanus, there are many life forms as there are stars. Matu. And here is a curious thing. In this galaxy, in our galaxy, the humanoid form is the general path that all life forms take. It is not, as many might think, the exception. Quite the contrary, it's the general rule. But look at here. Let me put it simple. Let's make it clear. Let's say simple. Let's make it clear. When these beings talk about humanoid, it doesn't mean a human like us. Alright? It's a humanoid like this one. Like these ones. Okay? For them, this one is also humans. I guess that the word human means something. Who means no answers. Human. What's the name man? What does really means man. I need to find out what this name means, man. So this is a humanoid, but it's not exactly a human. This one is a human, but the others aren't. This is not a human. Not a homo sapien. Not say sapien. We are not sapien. We are not sapien. We are something else. We are tyrants. We are not the homo sapiens. I don't agree. And these beings are not humanoids. These beings are aliens. It's different. Those are creatures which are not humanoids. To me, it's a wrong terms. And if these beings are called humanoids, this one, yes, is humanoid, not the others. And if these others are humanoids, then we are not humans. We are something else. Okay? Something wrong. Something have been taught wrongly. So, quite the contrary is the general rule. There are many life forms as their star. In galaxy and galaxy, the humanoid form is the general path that all life forms take. It's not as many might think the exception. It's the norms. Quite the contrary is the general rule. Matu remembered the many life forms that the Master had described to him before. There were humanoids in the galaxy who had evolved from ancestors that were insects. No wonder you were talking about ants, huh? And bees. And there were humanoids who had evolved from fish ancestors. But you are talking about aliens, not humans. There were humanoids descended of reptiles. So let's see, huh? Have we the insectoids, aliens? And boy, are they scary, even more than the reptiles. This one is the one, you know, those aliens that have long arms, like the slender man, come from insectoid, and is a reptilian insectoid being. The slender man is an insectoid reptilian creature, and he's deadly. Oh brother, oh brother, have somebody watched this movie from the 50s, I guess 60s, I don't know. That's the alien fishermen. They usually live in water. They are aquatic. Is it true? Humanoid one scout is a fisherman. So handsome. Is it true or is a wax arts?
Longest merman tail we've seen. There's a lot of speculation about where it came from.
Wow. He's amazing. If this is true,
What exactly it is and what it's doing on the...
But I still believe there's something on that we don't know. He's so handsome.
deck of this ship. Mermen are mythological deities that are supposed to look like mermaids, only that they are male. Most popular among...
Wow. And this one, the name is... I forgot. Even in the legends, the ancient legend, they will talk about this fishman here. I forget the name. Is wow. Oh, Inkai. But there's a name for him. It's not called Inkai. It's another name. He got another name that I forgot. Oh my god. So here's the fish people. Okay, you can find them on the water. I'm not kidding. I'm not an idiot or whatever. It's true. They do exist, only that they are very deep in the bottom of water, in a very deep areas of the water, and they are real. Okay, they are very, very real. Now here is the amphibious man or the frog man. They also exist. I've seen one this year on that his body is like a frog, his feet is like a frog, and he had a pouch beside him, and this pouch is pink color, and inside there's a lot of eggs, what looks like frog legs or eggs. So this is the amphibian man. And here is the bird man. Okay, Horus was one. And many people here have one of these higher self. Okay, either you have a higher self who is an amphibian, or you can be a body, a very heavy, a variant, or it could be a fish, or it could be an ape, or even a reptile. Okay, each one of us has a God self that represents these beings. Okay, Horus was one of them, and Anubis was a dog boy. He's a wolf guy. Wolf. I find Anubis so handsome. Oh my gosh, so cute, man, Anubis. My God, he's so bloody handsome. Wolf guy. He's the creature from hell, but he's, I mean, it's not a mask. He isn't like that. He's very cute, and I like him because he's black. I also like white. I like any color, but the black, like, I don't stand out. Wow, beautiful. He's so handsome. So this one's the wolfy race, okay? And they all have been visiting Earth, and they also have invested, all of these creatures have invested on Earth. And each one of we here have one of the ancestors, okay? Even though we wear a human body, we have one of the ancestors. Now let's see Horus. Is it how to pronounce Horus? I don't know. Horus is the bird guy. He's cute and he look like a eagle. And I see that he got a snake on top of his head. But he's very handsome, very cute. And here is a curious thing. In this galaxy, in our galaxy, which is the solar system, the humanoid form, okay. Matu remembered the many life forms that the master had described to him before. There were humanoids in the galaxy who had evolved from ancestors that were insects, and there were humanoids who have evolved from fish ancestors. There were humanoids descended of reptiles, birds, and even forms of life that nature was sure he would never ever see in his lifetime. Of course, there is the so feared, so marked reptilians, the most fearsome of all. I've seen this one with a camera and during a solar eclipse in April, I guess. They are workers, these one are workers. And then we came from apes. Really? I feel that the ape is a species. Did we come from them? So the human being descend from ancestors who were apes. You knew that, but the reptilian humanoids, human beings born of reptilian ancestors, that fascinated him. Will we speak of the reptilian beings again? Matu asked his teacher. Per looked at his young student. We must, Matu, he answered, for they are the source of the institution of humankind. They are the reason why we are here. Matu was never comfortable when Per said that. Somehow the thought of reptilian beings as the guiding force for humankind seemed repugnant to nature. Per saw the discomfort in his apprentice. How come a reptilian race teaching an ape race? It is something which you must learn, Matu, he reminded the youth. What is important to know in the pursuit of truth is this. Truth does not reside in what should be or what could be. Truth resides in what it is. Yeah, that's true. Now this is true. So that's now for part 1 of this segment. Never mind, let's continue in more 2 paragraphs. But are we then to set aside our dreams of what could be or what ought to be, Master? No, Major, the elder responded. Dreams and thoughts of what could be are what give us our goals. They give us reason to move and achieve. But in order to acquire those goals and those dreams, we can only utilize what it is. Remember this, Matu. No carpenter ever built a house by arguing what could happen if he had a hammer or if he had nails. No one ever built a house by complaining that he ought to have a hammer or that he ought to have some nails. The house is built by the person who uses what is at his hand. A carpenter should have a hammer, but if only stones are available, he uses the stone as a hammer. A carpenter should have a saw, but if no saw is available, he uses an axe or a knife. A warrior uses what is at hand and focuses not on what he or she should have. Matu mulled over the words of the elder. Truth lies in what it is, not what ought to be or what could be. A warrior uses what is at hand. How simple, he said to himself. How simple, but sat back again. Rest now, Matu. When we sit again, I want to talk about the words of the stars of Orion and the queen who is the source of all the religions of humankind. Matu sat in a way for a moment, staring at his teacher. Sat in a wall. How much will you share with me? He wondered. How much of what you really know will you share with me, elder? He pondered. He could only hope. As he rose to leave to take his time to rest, he turned back to look at the elder. The elder pair was looking up at the sky. Matu had gone for a walk in the trees beyond the great house. The silent sea of the forest seemed to act as a blanket protecting Matu from the outside world and from petty thoughts of life in the city. He was alone with his thoughts, his best companions. Sometimes he battled with them, sometimes he challenged them. Oftentimes he found that he had been betrayed by the thoughts that had been with him all of his life. As he sat in the trees, he could only smile as he thought how unimportant the things of the city really were. He loved the trees and the isolation. It was as if he was becoming aware of his primitive self again. He thought to himself, I'm becoming a primitive, a savage. How noble. A primitive being not savage at all. As he gazed back to the great house, he saw the light in the library was still on. He jumped it up. Maybe Pa is still there, he thought. Maybe we can still continue tonight. He turned and began to run back to the house. Matu burst through the door. He looked around the room but could not see the master. Long ago, baby Kitty. Matu turned to the window. The master was standing there, almost hidden in the darkness. Matu made his way to the table. He loved that beginning. On a new world still steaming and covered with green mist, somewhere near the surface of its newly formed oceans, tiny little wrinkled creatures thrived and lived. These were the first life forms of the green world. The tiny beings lived in the waters just above the very dangerous, cold and dark world of the deep, and just below the very bright world of the warm surface waters. With each generation, the little wrinklers came closer and closer to the surface waters. In time, they reached the surface waters, seeking the safety of the shallow depths. When the oceans became violent, bask in the warmth, when the seas were calm, but even when the waters were relatively peaceful, the waves brought the tiny creatures closer and closer to the land at the edge of the water world. I wonder if he means to say that this one's Earth or that one's Eridanus or Orion. I really wonder. He did not specify. However, talking about it, I like to talk about my infancy, my childhood, and at my textbook as a child, I was around 8 years old, and I was already in grade 4. Yeah, grade 4. That's primary 4. And I had many textbooks which I loved, which taught us moral values, and one of those it was not about moral value, but was about legends. And one of those books, I had this one. It was called the um the Green Kingdom of Laura. Green Kingdom of Laura. Lara is the queen's name of Orion. And back then in 1973, I was already having these things presented before me so as to remember something of the past. I didn't find this book though here. It has been a long time ago, since 1973, more than 40 years back. And I found this one instead. The Green Kingdom, Tales from the Forest. See, once upon a time, the Green Kingdom called Foristopolis forest. There lived in a leafy tree a little monkey called Snoopy or simply Beast. Couldn't they talk about the apes people here? Very naughty and smart. He was all up to the neighborhood. Not from there, in the same forest, there was a region called Pantanos. All you know about Pantanos is a martial place where uh, wildlife thrives. Swamp, home of the fearsome yellow-necked caimans called by the residents of the lizard forest, where Oswald Down, the strongest of the alligators lived. Wow! I wonder why these Brazilians back then knew already. These were reputed to be bullies and eaters of everything. Next to the beech tree ran a beautiful stream where he used to cool off and also quench his thirst. One day Oswaldão, how it is pronounced Oswaldão, appeared there. He was hunting and he stationed himself by the tree cause of the bees, who was humming a song. Who is afraid of bogeymen? Only the people who live on the ground. Oswaldão heard and thought, maybe I got a good snack here, clapped his hands and called, Hey, psst, are there people at home? Beast looked from the top of his den and said, Hello, your alligator. What? Hello, you alligator. What good winds bring you here? Is the Lord lost? No, I'm just trying to make friends. I'm kind of bored with life. Grandma understands, but who is going to venture to be friends with an alligator? It's dangerous to become a snake. It's not like I know how to separate friends from a nice lunch. Yeah, but I'm small and delicate. I'm not in the mood for a snack. But I wish you good luck. Oswaldão in a quiet tone said, See you soon, my good and sincere friend. I liked you and your sympathy despite the fear you talked to me respectfully. I hope to see you around. See you later. Beast kept thinking this one looks different, but his eyes don't deceive me. He has the eyes of a glutton. Best keep your distance. 3 days later, Beast was cooling down and got a fright. The bird flew, giving an alarm that someone was approaching. Beast jumped to his tree and looked at the bank of the stream. Then Oswaldão appeared, dragging himself roughly. Soon shouted my good friend, Are you home? Yes, replied the beast. And what are you doing? I smell wonderful in the air. Well, I'm waiting for some friends and I decided to fry murucum, water snake dumplings. They must be delicious. Could I taste it? Well, if the friend comes up to my den, I'll feed him. After all, we become friends, right? Yes, we are friends and companions. But how to go up there? It's so high, and you know that by nature I'm a crawler. But I confess that my mouth is watering. Beast thought this one is trying to get you ready. My friend, go up and reverse. You can. That's right, so I'll try. Oswaldão positioned himself on one push and felt that he was getting off the ground. Up in there, Beast encouraged. That's it, you can get a little more. When Oswaldão approached his big tail to the den of the beast, he touched a ladle of hot oil on Oswaldão's tail, which desperate and burned ran down to the lake. That's last. From there he shouted, You are going to pay me, you ordinary monkey. He was smarter than me, but there will be change. And he went down the stream towards the swamp. Wow! Now I'm say talk about human, monkey, the ape people, and the reptilians. Be celebrated if you laugh louder. Just begin de facto enmity. A week later, the stream dried up and bees, alarmed, talked to the neighborhood and discovered that the alligators had made a barricade and devoured the water that crossed the forest. So to drink, all the animals had to go to the swamp, and it became easy prey. Losers were increasing, and so was the thirst and how to go to the lake. Oswald Dunn was certainly waiting for him. Beast thought, and thought, then came up with a plan. He went to the pantry and got honey and bathed himself in honey and went down and rubbed himself in the undergrowth and turned it green from head to toe and then went quietly to the edge of the lake. He drank water and took care of his surroundings. It was midday, the sun was hot. Alligators all over the lake were moving, and then at 4 meters on a sandbar, Oswald Dunn was sunbathing and saw that strange bush taking so much water and shouted, "Why drink so much water compared to green leaf?" Oh, I wish to have the rest of this story. It seems very interesting. But the one that I read as a child, the called the Reino Verde, o Reino Verde da Lara, que é the Green Kingdom of Laura. It was about undersea people. Okay, there was a green people living under the sea. That was what I was presented to me as a child at school. And now I'm gonna present. I'm gonna at least look for what the Indonesian people also see as the orang bunyi. Orang bunyi, I'm not sure that I pronounce it correct, is a people who live in the depths of the sea, and they too are green. Coincidence? I'm not sure. No, I mean I don't believe it's coincidence at all. The name is Orang Bunian. Orang Bunian. There's two versions. One, they are the green people from the sea, the bottom of the Sea of Java, deep in the Pacific, and another is from the forest, or either they come from the sea and goes into the forest, either way. And you see, this one is like lava, is it? And that one's the ancient people, or not ancient, but ancient creatures that evolved into humanoid. It was caught in the forest of Indonesia. It's called Orang Bunian. My gosh. And the creature went after the man. Child, what kana the shulik? What the chuli bunian? Child, you know what? They found a different child, one kind of elf. Indonesian holds a lot of mystery. I don't think so. This is a human. They are black. These people lie. This is not a no human. This is a human. These people that they're talking about are green. They are not human like that. Someone abandoned that child there in the forest. Just these people believe that there are a queen and her kingdom. These Indonesian people, that there's a queen and her kingdom in the Pacific Ocean. But I don't know what it has to do with my textbook back in Brazil, in the northeast of Brazil. I really don't understand. What's the connection? What's the coincidence? Why? So, but the tribe, so there were primitive ringers, okay, that one I show, that show in the forest of Indonesia, did not survive the toss and turning of the destructive waves, and men did not live through the sudden fall into the coarse sands. So for men, waters were relatively peaceful. The waves brought the tiny creatures closer and closer to the land at the edge of the water world. For many generations, the tiny creatures managed to avoid the land, but destiny would not be denied. In time, the churning ocean waves carried some of the tiny squirming creatures, tossing and tumbling over the waters, hurling them onto the white sandy beaches. Many of the primitive ringers did not survive the tossing and turning of the destructive waves, and many did not live through the sudden fall onto the coarse sands. But a precious few managed to survive, thrown into stagnant pools on the beach or in hollows of rocks and cliff faces. The tiny creatures endured the chaos of the waves. They have lived, but the travels were not over. For suddenly, though they were still alive, they found themselves confronting a new life in a new world. It was true that the waters were much quieter in the stagnant pools than the constantly moving world of waves that they had come from. There was no pounding of waves and no surf, no crashing and thrashing about, and there was a very little food. Matu could imagine in the green world and the tiny ringlets. Peck continued. But some of the tiny primordial creatures held on. They adapted to their new world. They learned to feed on the tiny plants and the pond itself and survive on the bits of vegetation that fell on the pond's surface. Some died, but some lived. Those that lived became stronger, and as they survived, they multiplied and became larger in number. This was good, but yet it was also bad. Soon the food resources of the pond were not enough to provide for them all. And as it has happened on so many worlds, with so many beings, the tiny ringlets began to feed on each other. Survival demanded that only the strongest creatures would endure life in the tiny ponds. Cannibalism, Matu thought to himself. I guess it is everywhere. Over the course of time, some wranglers made their way to the edges of the pond while feeding. They learned to lift their tiny heads out of the water and eat of the moss and tiny plants hanging from the rocks. The tactics worked for a while. In time, in order to find food, some of the tiny wranglers were forced to leave the water entirely, laboriously edging their boards out of the water, eating what they could, then rolling back into the safety of the water. Generations later, they had learned to leave the water entirely, carrying a small distance from the water to the vegetation in the mud and rocks. Then hurriedly return to the soothing water of the pond before the rays of the sun killed them. It was a dangerous life, Matu. Wriggling in the land and mud often caused many of the venturing wranglers to become trapped in the mud or in small holes in the ground. Some wranglers failed to return to the waters before the sun's rays dried out their skins. Foraging on land for food had exposed them to the new dangers and created the hazards that they had never encountered before. But it had also provided an entirely new source of food for the little creatures. As they continued to evolve and adapt, their tiny, wriggling muscles gave way to tiny primitive legs. Just like a tadpole, their skins became hardened, and their fins turned into grasping claws. But even more importantly, the tiny creatures began to develop lungs that allowed them to breathe in the newly formed atmosphere. In this way, the very first of the primitive crawling insects was born in the misty green world. Matu pictured the tiny wriggling insects as not much bigger than a grain of rice, maybe even smaller. I've read about these worms-like creatures or wrigglers that is the 15 multidimensional beings has become, and they are the one who manipulate everything here on earth and pit one faction against another, and just kind of controls everything from behind the scene. And if that, it is the end of part 1 for this segment.